What do you do when the HOA turns your land into their personal dump site? I built something they didn't see coming, an incinerator. And every puff of smoke? Yeah, it goes right to their doorstep. They wanted trash? I gave them fire. Tom jolted awake to the deafening silence. Something was wrong. The rhythmic hum of his farm's irrigation system was absent. Rubbing his eyes in disbelief, he hurried outside. What he saw defied all reason. A towering mound of garbage, jumbled together like a hastily discarded landfill, now loomed where his fields once proudly stretched. For months, the homeowners association had been shoveling their unwanted trash onto his land, claiming it as community recycling. But this wasn't recycling. It was vandalism, a blatant encroachment on his property rights. As Tom took in the stench and chaos, a spark ignited within him. It wasn't just the foul odor. It was the knowledge that when you're pushed to the edge, you find a way to fight back. With a mix of anger and a surge of defiant creativity, Tom hatched a plan that would not only reclaim his land, but also send a message so bold the HOA wouldn't be able to ignore it. He decided that if they wanted garbage, he'd give them something even nastier. A massive incinerator built right on his property, rigged to vent its blazing smoke straight into the heart of the HOA office. By the time the first embers glowed faintly against the dark sky, Tom knew that every wisp of smoke that curled toward the community's pristine facades would stand as a testament to his refusal to be bullied. Tonight, his land would become a battleground, a burning message of resistance against those who tried to control where he could live and what he could do with his own property. The stage was set for a showdown that would redefine the balance of power in his community. Tom Hadley had grown up on the family farm, an expanse of land that had been lovingly cultivated and passed down through generations. Located on the outskirts of the upscale, gated community of Silver Springs Estates, his property was a patchwork of fertile fields, well-tended orchards, and rolling pastures. The farmhouse, weathered yet proud, stood as a testament to years of hard work and the enduring spirit of independence. Tom's farm wasn't just a source of income. It was his identity, a symbol of self-reliance in a world increasingly dominated by corporate interests and bureaucratic red tape. In Silver Springs Estates, order was everything. Every lawn was spotless, every house a model of uniform perfection, and every aspect of communal life was regulated by the strict, sometimes draconian, rules of the local homeowners association, HOA. At the helm of this meticulous regime was Karen Whitfield, affectionately and infamously known as HOA Karen. In her early 50s and always immaculately dressed, Karen took it upon herself to police every facet of the community. Armed with a clipboard, a smartphone, and an unyielding belief in the superiority of conformity, she was determined to enforce a narrow, sanitized vision of suburban perfection. While many of the residents of Silver Springs Estates mindlessly followed the rules out of fear or habit, there were those like Tom Hadley who valued their independence above all. Tom's farm stand was a beacon of fresh produce and homemade goods, an extension of his free-spirited nature and a celebration of the rewards of honest labor. Over the years, his stand had become a favorite among locals, a vibrant contrast to the rigid, cookie-cutter existence imposed by the HOA. But as the seasons changed and winter approached, a new problem emerged. In a move that shocked Tom and outraged those who valued personal property rights, the HOA began using his land as a dumping ground for their excess garbage. What started as a few stray bags soon became a sprawling, unsightly landfill that not only marred the beauty of his fields, but also threatened the environmental health of the entire community. For Tom, it wasn't just about a messy field or a ruined view. It was a matter of principle. His land was his legacy, and the intrusive actions of the HOA under Karen's strict supervision threatened to erode that very legacy. When his attempts to resolve the issue through proper channels were met with dismissive bureaucratic responses, Tom knew he had to fight back in a way that would capture the community's attention and restore the dignity of his heritage. Determined to strike a decisive blow against the tyranny of arbitrary rule enforcement, Tom put his mind to work. He envisioned something radical, an incinerator custom-built on his property, that would not only dispose of the garbage, but also vent a relentless plume of smoke directed at the very heart of the HOA's power structure. It was an act of rebellion, a creative form of protest that was as much about reclaiming his land as it was about sending a clear message to everyone in Silver Springs Estates. In a community where conformity reigned supreme and individuality was often stifled, Tom's decision to stand up was both brave and necessary. His fight was not just personal. It represented a broader struggle for the right to live, work, and express oneself freely without being hounded by the overzealous reach of an intrusive HOA. The conflict escalated the moment Tom discovered the full extent of the garbage invasion. Each week, bags of refuse, discarded furniture, and miscellaneous debris grew larger and more unsightly on his once pristine land. What began as a few stray items soon formed a vast, jumbled mounds that stretched across several acres. The stench of decay, mixed with industrial chemicals and rotting food, permeated the air, a constant reminder that his land had been violated. After weeks of futile complaints and fruitless discussions with the HOA board, Tom decided that talk was no longer enough. He needed to act, and he needed to do it in a way that both reclaimed his property and delivered a sharp, unmistakable message to Karen Whitfield and her cronies. Late one frigid night, as the garbage mound loomed ominously in the moonlight, Tom stepped outside with a resolve forged from years of farm life. He gathered detailed evidence by recording video footage of the unsightly landfill and taking samples that illustrated the environmental damage being caused. Every piece of digital evidence he collected confirmed the same bitter truth. The HOA, under Karen's domineering influence, was deliberately using his property as a dumping ground to enforce their idea of community order. There was no legal basis for their actions, and the environmental impact was severe. With his evidence securely archived, Tom decided on his countermeasure, a custom-built incinerator. Over the next several days, he worked meticulously, leveraging his deep knowledge of his own property and his years of hands-on experience in all matters practical. He researched designs, consulted with engineers, and procured the necessary parts to build an incinerator that would not only process the garbage efficiently, but also vent its smoke in a precise, targeted manner. His plan was clear. Every time the incinerator roared to life, the resulting billowing smoke would be channeled right toward the HOA's office, a blazing, persistent reminder of the injustice that had been inflicted upon him. As Tom assembled the incinerator on a cleared section of his land, tension in the community began to mount. Neighbors started sharing their own stories of annoyance with the HOA's policies. On community forums and social media, posts with hashtags like #TrashToSmoke and #ReclaimOurLand began to appear. Many residents, who had long been too afraid to stand up against the strictures of the HOA, saw Tom's burgeoning project as a beacon of hope, a chance to reclaim personal freedom from an overreaching authority. Karen, ever vigilant and unwilling to tolerate any deviation from her idea of order, was furious. She held several impromptu meetings with the HOA board, demanding that they immediately stop the garbage piling on Tom's land and impose stiffer penalties. Her voice, usually so commanding, now trembled with indignation as she insisted that the board was being undermined by anarchy and disorder. However, despite her tirades, the mounting digital evidence and the growing chorus of support for Tom rendered her claims increasingly untenable. One particular night, as the final preparations for the incinerator were being completed, Tom recorded a live video update. He showed the intricate setup, the furnace, the ductwork, and the specially engineered chimney designed to direct the smoke. "This," he said, his voice steady with resolve, "is not just a machine. It's my voice, my stand against the arbitrary destruction of my land. And tomorrow, when the incinerator fires up and sends its smoke right to their door, they'll know exactly who we are." The video was shared widely, and within hours, it became a rallying cry for other disenfranchised residents. The conflict had escalated from a simple property dispute to a full-scale community showdown. Digital petitions and protest banners started to appear, demanding that the HOA board be held accountable for their actions. Tom's incinerator project had become a symbol of resistance, a tangible representation of the fight for individual rights and the freedom to use one's property as they saw fit. Every step of the construction was documented. Neighbors posted time-stamped images of the incinerator's progress, and local bloggers praised Tom's ingenuity. If the HOA wants to treat people like trash, then let them deal with the consequences, one post read, and the sentiment spread like wildfire. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation that would force the HOA board, and especially Karen Whitfield, to reckon with the long-overdue defense of individual property rights. As dawn broke on the day of the incinerator's first firing, Cedar Ridge was abuzz with anticipation. The digital petition calling for reform of the HOA's policies had surpassed 10,000 signatures, and social media was alive with hashtags such as hashtag #TrashToSmoke and hashtag #ReclaimOurLand. What had started as a small, personal battle had erupted into a full-scale community movement. For many, Tom's audacious plan was a beacon of hope, a defiant declaration that no one should be bullied into submission by an overzealous association. Local news stations descended upon Cedar Ridge, capturing scenes of residents gathered outside Tom's farm, smartphones at the ready, as they prepared for the incinerator demonstration. One anchor, standing in front of the sprawling fields, declared on live TV, "Today a long-buried dispute over private property rights comes to a head, as one man takes on the mighty HOA in a battle of fire and smoke." Interviews with local residents revealed a mixture of admiration and incredulity. "I never thought we'd see the day when someone would literally use fire to fight back," one neighbor remarked, while another added, "It's about time someone stood up to those petty rules." Inside the HOA offices, Karen Whitfield was frantically trying to salvage her authority. Meetings were held behind closed doors as board members debated how to respond to the escalating controversy. Some still clung to the strict regulations, insisting that rules were rules, no matter how draconian. Others, however, had begun to see the undeniable merit in Tom's fight. Leaked minutes from these meetings revealed heated exchanges. One board member was quoted saying, "Our community cannot be held hostage by outdated protocols when individuals fight for what is rightfully theirs." The schism within the board added further fuel to the digital firestorm. By mid-morning, Tom's incinerator was ready. Neatly constructed with a robust furnace and a state-of-the-art exhaust system, it stood as a testament to his resolve. He activated the controls, and within minutes, the machine roared to life. Flames danced within the hearth, and a thick plume of smoke billowed into the sky. But this was no ordinary smoke. It was carefully channeled through a series of ducts and directed, with pinpoint accuracy, toward the headquarters of the HOA. The spectacle was undeniable. Neighbors watched in awe as the smoke, dark and determined, swept over the manicured lawns of the HOA offices. The very same building that had issued fines and enforced petty regulations was now being blanketed in a tangible symbol of rebellion. Phones flashed and cameras recorded every moment as the digital evidence of Tom's defiance spread across every social platform. Tweets, Instagram stories, and Facebook posts lit up with images of the smoke streaming toward the HOA, accompanied by captions like "Taste your own medicine, Karen," and "When you treat people like garbage, you get burned." Karen's reaction was instantaneous and furious. Security footage captured her frantically pacing inside the HOA office, her phone clutched tightly to her ear as she attempted to rally her supporters and demand that the incinerator be shut down immediately. But by that point, the digital momentum was unstoppable. Local activists, digital petition organizers, and outraged neighbors took to social media, unleashing a torrent of criticism against the HOA's long-standing policies and their enforcers' blatant abuse of power. Amid the rising tide of public outcry, the incident quickly evolved from a local skirmish into a significant community debate. Town hall meetings were called in Cedar Ridge, where residents passionately debated the issue of property rights versus arbitrary enforcement. "This isn't just about a machine burning smoke," one resident argued. "It's about reclaiming our freedom to live how we choose without an overzealous HOA dictating every move. Every shared video clip, every hashtag, further amplified the call for accountability and reform. As the day wore on, the digital dossier compiled by Tom and his supporters became the centerpiece of the movement. Detailed logs, video evidence, and supportive testimonials were aggregated into a comprehensive report that not only documented the incinerator incident, but also captured the broader struggle for individual rights in Cedar Ridge. The report was shared on community forums and sent to local government officials, urging them to step in and enforce a higher standard of fairness and transparency. The tension had reached its zenith. The HOA board, now under unprecedented public pressure, had no choice but to announce a final public hearing to address the incident and to outline new policies that would protect residents' rights. The stage was set for a definitive showdown, one that promised to reshape the governance of Cedar Ridge and redefine what it meant to live in a community where individual freedom was paramount. The decisive moment came on a crisp, clear morning in a packed boardroom at the Cedar Ridge Community Center. The room was teeming with HOA officials, law enforcement representatives, community leaders, and hundreds of determined residents, all gathered for the final public hearing. With a calm, yet resolute presence, Councilwoman Patricia Reynolds stepped up to the podium. Her eyes shone with the collective determination of a community that had long been silenced under arbitrary rule enforcement. After a thorough review of all digital evidence, including time-stamped security footage, detailed energy and property logs, and the countless testimonies of our residents, we have reached an inescapable conclusion. Councilwoman Reynolds began, her voice unwavering and authoritative. It is abundantly clear that the actions taken by Mrs. Karen Whitfield, specifically her decision to pile garbage on private property and her subsequent enforcement of baseless fines, were not founded on any legitimate concern for community aesthetics or safety. Instead, they were driven solely by personal bias and a gross abuse of power. Our community's rights as property owners and the freedom to operate without undue interference must be upheld. A heavy silence fell over the room as Reynolds continued. Effective immediately, the HOA board will rescind all fines and sanctions related to these violations, and we will initiate a full disciplinary review of the policies that allowed such a travesty. Furthermore, we will implement new guidelines to safeguard the rights of every resident in Cedar Ridge. Today's decision is not merely about reversing an arbitrary action. It is a resounding declaration that our community will stand for fairness, accountability, and the inalienable right to manage our own property. Her words struck a chord, and murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. At that moment, a revered community advocate, renowned for his steadfast commitment to individual rights, rose to speak. "Today we stand united," he declared, his voice ringing with passion. "No resident should have to endure the tyranny of arbitrary rule enforcement. Let this vote be the turning point, a clear signal that Cedar Ridge values innovation, independence, and the sanctity of private property above all else. We demand accountability, and we will not rest until every violation of our rights is met with swift, decisive action." His declaration was met with thunderous applause, uniting everyone in a powerful call for change. Following his address, a senior officer from the local government oversight department presented the final dossier, a meticulously compiled record of all the digital evidence, expert testimonies, and official documents that confirmed the legitimacy of my property rights and debunked every claim made by Karen Whitfield. The evidence was irrefutable. The garbage invasion was a flagrant violation of private property, and my response, a legally sanctioned incinerator directing its smoke to the HOA office, was entirely within my rights. The Internal Affairs Panel unanimously endorsed strict disciplinary measures for those responsible for the abuse of power, and the full report was scheduled for immediate public release. Councilwoman Reynolds concluded, "Let this resolution mark the dawn of a new era for Cedar Ridge, a community where every resident's rights are inviolable, where public authority is exercised with transparency and fairness, and where creativity and independence are not only tolerated but celebrated. Our vote today is a resounding declaration that we will protect our freedoms and that we will not allow personal vendettas to dictate our lives. Together, we stand for justice, accountability, and the right to live and prosper free from arbitrary interference. Her final words, delivered with unwavering conviction, sealed the turning point in our struggle for property rights and creative freedom. In that defining moment, as every face in the boardroom shone with determination and hope, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. The overwhelming digital evidence and the unified voice of our community forced the HOA board to take decisive action, a turning point that would forever reshape the governance of Cedar Ridge. The days of petty fines and personal vendettas were over, and a future built on respect for individual rights was finally within our grasp. In the weeks that followed the historic vote, Cedar Ridge underwent a profound transformation. News of the rescinded fines and the sweeping reforms implemented by the HOA board spread quickly through local media and on social networks, igniting impassioned debates about property rights, creative freedom, and community governance. Editorials in the local newspaper, with headlines such as "A New Dawn for Cedar Ridge" and "Community United for Freedom," celebrated the decisive actions taken to protect every resident's right to manage their own property without fear of arbitrary penalties. Hashtags like #PropertyRights, #NoMoreHOA, and #ArtIsFreedom trended widely, reinforcing the community's shared determination. Town hall meetings and community forums saw unprecedented attendance as residents gathered to express their experiences and to envision a future in which individuality was honored. Neighbors who had long suffered under the oppressive rules of the HOA now spoke openly about their right to live creatively and independently. "Our land is our legacy, and we must protect it," one impassioned resident declared at a bustling meeting, his voice echoing throughout the packed hall. The atmosphere was vibrant with hope and the promise of lasting change, a commitment to ensuring that Cedar Ridge would always defend the rights and dignity of its inhabitants. Within the reformed HOA board and local public safety departments, swift measures were implemented. Senior officials, led by Director James Carter and Lieutenant Marcus Reed, launched comprehensive training programs on ethical governance, cultural sensitivity, and the responsible management of community resources. Regular internal audits and transparent disciplinary processes were instituted to ensure that every complaint was carefully evaluated and that no resident would be subjected to arbitrary fines again. Our duty is to protect our freedoms, and we will not tolerate any abuse of power, Lieutenant Reed declared at a follow-up press conference, a statement that resonated deeply throughout the community. Community leaders and local civil rights organizations also mobilized to further empower residents. Workshops, public forums, and educational campaigns were organized to raise awareness about property rights and the importance of creative expression. When we unite, our collective voice is powerful enough to reshape our community, a local activist proclaimed at a town hall, inspiring countless residents to stand together for a fairer future. For me, the battle from confrontation to resolution was both deeply personal and profoundly transformative. My decision to fight back against HOA Karen's audacious intrusion on my property by constructing a state-of-the-art incinerator that sent its smoke directly to her door had reclaimed more than just physical land. It had sparked a movement. Neighbors, once silenced by fear of arbitrary enforcement, found their voices, sharing their own experiences and rallying behind the cause. The digital evidence I had so painstakingly compiled became a beacon for every resident who believed in the sanctity of property rights and the freedom to live unconstrained by bureaucratic meddling. Karen Whitfield, once the unwavering enforcer of Cedar Ridge's rules, was now reduced to a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that no one is above accountability when faced with a united community. Her influence dwindled as records of her transgressions circulated widely, emphasizing the need for reform and the perils of unchecked power. At a final celebratory gathering held in the Central Park of Cedar Ridge, residents, local officials, and community advocates assembled beneath the warm glow of the setting sun. A large banner reading, "Unity, Freedom, and Property Rights," was unfurled between towering oak trees, and heartfelt speeches echoed promises of a brighter, more inclusive future. Today, we celebrate the victory of our rights and the indomitable spirit of our community, Councilwoman Reynolds proclaimed, her voice filled with unwavering determination. The resounding ovation that followed was a powerful affirmation of our collective commitment to protecting our freedoms and ensuring that no one could ever again impose their will arbitrarily upon us. As each new day dawned over Cedar Ridge, the legacy of that fateful confrontation endured, a beacon of transformative change. The story of how the HOA piled garbage on my land and how I built an incinerator that sent its smoke straight to their door became a rallying cry for every resident who believed that creativity, innovation, and individual rights were inviolable. Every sunrise carried with it the promise that in Cedar Ridge, truth, justice, and freedom would forever prevail. In the end, what began as a personal battle evolved into a watershed moment for our entire community. We emerged more united, more vigilant, and more determined to defend our rights against any form of bureaucratic overreach. And as the sun rose each morning over our reclaimed neighborhood, it brought with it the promise that Cedar Ridge would remain a place where creativity, integrity, and the spirit of independence shone brighter than any rule ever could.